To our webinar today. Thank you for those who are in attendance. Just so you're aware, if you have any questions through the presentation today, please feel free to drop those in the chat, and we will try and answer those as many as we can towards the end of the talk today. Again, my name is Mark Kinsey. I'm with Biome Makers. I'm the U.S. Director of Sales, and I have the privilege of having Brendan. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Mark. I appreciate you having me on here today. So my name is Brendan Juarez. I'm an agronomy account manager here at Midwest Laboratories. Been with our team here for just a little over 5 years, and really excited to talk through the mesh between the standard nutrient analysis and soil DNA today.
Yeah, so if you haven't figured out, the title is Midwest Labs is now one of the proud partners of Biome Makers and BeCrop Technology. So that's what Brendan and I will be visiting with you today is about that partnership and what Biome Makers contributes to what Midwest has already been delivering from fantastic soil test results and other results in the industry. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so if you have questions or want to replay things later, that will be made available shortly after it's concluded. So let's get started. So a little bit about Biome Makers. We have, I guess, the biggest thing is we have the world's largest database. Over 55 million microbes have been identified. As you can see on the map, we work across 56 countries. 200 plus collaborators. We've got over 201 crops in our database that we can work with and make recommendations. And I've also published over 35 scientific papers. So just the other thing to mention is Biome Makers has been in business for over 10 years. So a lot of time has been done to curate and develop the tools and bring them in a user-friendly, informational, impactful way to help drive decisions at the farm gate. And marry this with the technology that Brendan and I will be talking about here in just a few minutes. So how do we do it? If you're not familiar, if you've been on webinars with us in the past, then you're familiar with who Biome Makers is. If you're not, we are a soil testing company, but we come at it from a DNA sequencing. So again, our technology is really our secret sauce of being able to pair biological data and drive insights that impact things from fertility to disease to stress mitigation, and being able to do that through the tools that we provide. And one of those is being married with Midwest Labs and their capabilities today. Brendan, you want to give us some history of Midwest Labs?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Midwest Labs, currently we're celebrating our 50th year of being in business. And so we were founded in 1975 by Ken Pullman, who just recently passed over the last year. But we're a family-owned company, one location, and we're located here in Omaha, Nebraska. Currently, Ken's son, Brent Pullman, is our CEO and owner. And that just continues the legacy that Ken had set back in 1975. The uniqueness of the company as well is that Ken was a soil chemist and knew agronomy in and out, and that was his passion, for this industry. And so we look to continue that for years to come. As far as how our company looks. So we're spread across one campus, 13 different buildings on our campus. We started here at our location just right, I believe, in 1980, around there, where we were just a one building, and since then we've expanded. So with what we do on the soil testing side, in the heat of the season, which is going to be starting here fairly soon, we're running anywhere from 25 to 35 soil samples per day. That equates to roughly 1.7 to 1.8 million soil samples throughout the season there. So definitely a busy time, but that's kind of our just on the soil sampling side. and as far as soil sampling goes, we that's something that we're known for. However, we do cover various departments, being environmental, our feeds and pet foods, human consumption foods, and fuels. So definitely a wide array, but that's kind of just a quick overview there at Midwest Labs.
Great. So what made you decide to pursue a partnership with Biome Makers?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question there. So when we look at nutrient analysis, we're always looking for highs and lows. So we understand that not all yield is created equal, not all soil is created equal. But we look at the industry as a whole, and there's always a incomplete system or a gap that we're trying to figure something out. We can run all of the nutrients and see what those interactions are, but how do we complete the puzzle as best as we can to understand what's going on, if we've done all the right things, because there's only so many things that we can control, outside of the environment that we're given. And so when we're thinking about that, it's like, how do we make the most complete offering to our clients to do to help make the best decisions out in the field, and real-time decisions, and with data that correlates and makes sense. And so this is ultimately why we had decided to partner with Biome Makers, is to give our clients the most complete analysis that they can make the most informed decisions on.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate the partnership and look forward to helping deliver that value to you and your growers.
Yeah, we appreciate it as well.
So I guess we need to discuss for your clientele or anyone who may not be familiar with, how does BeCrop technology, or how does Biome Makers technology really work? So I'll spend a few minutes going through that. So again, we run metagenomics amplicon system. We look at 16S and ITS. And so what that means is instead of analyzing the entire sequence of DNA, we go in for very specific snippets. That's what the 16S and ITS allows us to do, and then goes through the replication process, and then we can identify who's there. That allows us to put it into a phylogenetic tree, which allows us to provide the actionable insights. So we can identify who's there, we can determine what their count is, like how many of them are there, and then put that into the actual insights. So do these produce phytohormones? Does this group make nitrogen available? Oh, these are the guys that are actually working against us and making nitrogen unavailable. So, there's the ability to run the tests and run this and that. The real power becomes in the pieces that we're going to talk about coming up, is being able to put these into functional groups and then turn that into actionable insights. So from a nutrient standpoint, Brendan, I think you mentioned earlier of, looking at the highs and lows, we kind of look at it of who's making things available and who's making things unavailable. So really, who's helping you in the soil and who's hurting you in the soil, and how do we manage around that as well? So it starts off with a soil sample, BeCrop test. This is where we partnered with Midwest, and what they'll be offering to customers starting this fall is being able to run the BeCrop test. And yes, that is the tube that we use for gathering the soil. So it's the same process that you're familiar with pulling soil samples for a standard fertility analysis. But we're gonna require a little bit smaller sample to run to our lab, and then sequence and provide the results. So again, what's this look like? Again, it starts with the soil. So if you've been working with Midwest Labs and pulling soil samples, we bring the soil in, we run it through a process. That process is the sequencing. We generate the bio data. This is an example of a map that we provide and is available to Midwest customers of looking at who's in the soil and what's their relative abundance compared to everyone else. And then we turn that into the functional reports. So the functional reports are those pieces that are going to work with your traditional fertility analysis of you have a phosphorus score, or how available is it from a biological standpoint. So in doing that, we really focus on look at it from like 3 metrics. So you have soil quality, you have plant health, and then nutrient cycling. So you can see the list of items broken down there amongst the 3 categories. So you have things like biodiversity, fungal bacteria ratio, resilience. We also look at diseases in the plant health side, or phytohormone productions, stress adaptation. There's been a lot of emphasis on managing abiotic stress and where that comes from. And we've got some great metrics to help identify how resilient or what is the ability of the natural inherency of that soil to handle some of those stresses. And then nutrient cycling. Again, this is critically important. I think Brendan and I are going to talk about this here towards the end of the presentation, especially given today's challenges of really understanding that nutrient cycle. And to what you said, Brendan, earlier, was given the most complete report and analysis that can be given when making a recommendation. So how do we do that? Again, it's through these the reports. So this is an example of a report on the right. Looking at soil quality, these are the metrics that we provide. Some background is the dots are color coded. You can see them in the bottom right hand of your screen. The more yellow it is, the lower. So the more opportunity that we have to improve. The darker the blue, the higher those values are, and typically the less opportunity we have to improve. There are a few exceptions of the rule where the darker blue is not always better, and we can get into those here in a little bit. But this is an example of looking at our soil quality scores. Also looking at soil health scores. So there we have health, biocontrol, hormone production, stress adaptation. Oops, I skipped one. And then we also have the nutrition. So being able to look at carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. We also look at micronutrient pathways as well. Being able to give some more information. There's other metrics specifically in there. I guess we won't get in that now, but help with iron, something that is pretty important when you get out west, especially when you're looking at IDC or iron deficiency chlorosis in soybeans. So how does BeCrop technology work with other types of soil testing? Brendan, why don't you run us through some of the offerings that Midwest Labs has to offer, just in case the crowd isn't 100% aware of what all you guys offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about the soil testing that Midwest Labs provides, we have essentially the 4 categories that you see here on the screen. So we look at physical, chemical, a portion of biological, and even more now with the BeCrop technology. And then we have some other offerings too that helps complement that our soil analysis. And we think of this as an overall or overarching offering that can be used for growers throughout the season to give a better idea of what's going on. And so to kind of break this down, the physical analysis that we offer, there's soil texture, which also comes in with grain size. Grain size is used a lot in the engineering firm realm. If they're trying to figure out or identify how that soil is made up, so percent sand, silt, and clay. We do offer bulk density as well as water holding capacity, which is very important there in irrigated areas to understand how much water we can put out and how much water that soil is able to hold there for the growing crop. Chemical analysis, so we offer a wide array of soil fertility testing. Now we primarily focus on the plant available nutrients, which would be in our standard tests such as the S1A or S3C. We do offer a Malic 3 analysis as well for those people who may be in the coastal states, to where they're more attuned to those that scale. We also do total nutrient digest, which is known as our PT2 analysis. So when we're looking at what that soil is completely made up of, both organic, inorganic, in that mineral form, that's the kind of test that we're looking at. So really quick on the chemical analysis, so a portion, and this falls under the biological as well, but we do offer the Haney test in our soil health packages. Now, the way I explain the Haney test is, and just our soil health package as a whole, is that it gives a very high level snapshot of what's going on in the field there from a micro standpoint. Now, it's a 24-hour CO2 burst, but we do know that there's specific microbes that wake up at different temperatures, different times. So those are things that we have to keep in mind. It's giving us an estimation, but it's not giving us the full picture. And so getting into that biological side, that's where the BeCrop technology comes into play, to where we can see what microbes are doing, the nutrient cycling, the mineralization, the ones that relay that crop response to where they're in direct, if you want to say direct contact with that specific plant, looking for what they're needing from a nutrient standpoint. So that's what's really exciting, as we get into this biological realm of understanding what other interactions there are. Now, as far as those supporting tests that we offer, so under that other category, we have that plant tissue analysis. So that's helping us in real time during the season to understand, okay, we know what nutrients are theoretically plant available in the soil, or what should be expected throughout that growing season. But that's where, we have to have both of those to have a relationship of understanding, to either make a recommendation right off the cuff, or if there's trends that we want to use for future seasons, on how those nutrients are being taken up in the plant. As far as pesticide residues, we do offer a small quantity of that. Now, it's in soil. Majority of it predates, 1980s, 1990s chemistry. So a lot of the chemistries we use today, aren't included within that as much, but it is something that we do offer in soils from time to time there. The other big one that we do offer is irrigation and water testing. And so that helps us understand, is there specific nutrients that are coming through our water source? And do we have, say, a high magnesium in this irrigated field? There's certain interactions, and when we talk about Liebig's law of we have more of one nutrient, doesn't always mean that's better off. So that also helps us understand, to the water that we're putting as a source to our crop, how does that interact with not only the soil but also the plant itself. So that's kind of an overview there of what all we have to offer here at Midwest.
Great, thanks, Brendan. So this is the opportunity to really start diving into that integrated approach. I know you mentioned earlier the complete analysis, and I know when we were talking yesterday, Brendan, I won't steal your thunder, but I think this slide, you made a great comparison yesterday, so I'll hand it over to you to kind of walk through that.
Sure. Yep. Thanks, Mark. So, and I'll do my best to describe this. Really, in my mind, it's almost the infinity sign that we really should be talking about. But this is the best idea I could come up with. And so, just a little explanation of it. As we talk about a complete offering with, as much data as we can use to make the most educated decision in the field. You'll notice that there's a triangle here in the middle of this cycle, and yes, it is kind of a homage to the disease triangle. So when we talk about environment, pathogen, host, whatnot, there, because it does fit in this, we can understand the risks that are posed by the soil DNA, to where do we have specific microbes that may help with resistance, whether it's from a nematode standpoint or a disease standpoint. So this is really breaking down the complete cycle of looking at plant tissue, looking at the soil health, looking at the soil nutrients, and then understanding the biological processes that take place to make the plant and the soil health possible. So that's kind of a gist there. And Mark, I may have forgot a few things there, so if there's anything to add,
No, I think it's great. I think this is one of the most exciting times to be in ag. We've seen a lot of things change, from hybrids to modern day fertilizer chemistry's changed. But I think sticking to this topic of we've pulled tissue samples for years, we've pulled soil samples for years, but we've really not had a good way to understand mineralization or immobilization. And so today, being able to marry BeCrop technology and really understand that biological side of who's helping and who's hurting, and marrying that with some well-respected, well-known, and understood technology, I think we're able to bring this full circle now, and really provide some valuable insights to growers when making decisions, especially in a year like this year, that we've not been able to do before.
Yeah, absolutely. And even to add on to that, we look at and as we're going to the next slide, we can kind of, go through this too, but, we've seen a lot of different things going on here, even throughout the Midwest, if not the whole United States. We've seen the last 3 to 4 years where we've had D1 to D3 droughts in a lot of these areas. And, as far as, fertilizer goes, and we have talks on the daily when, people call in here to the office, and it goes a lot like I need to apply nutrients, and I know that I need to replace with what I'm intending to take off. But how can I get by with that for multiple years? And so this year, just like you had said, Mark, we're starting to see that gate open here. We're in that cycle where we're starting to see more moisture. Things are looking promising. The problem is we may not see the economics be as promising. So how do we, again, make the most informed decision based off the data we have? And I think you'll probably get into this here a little bit too, but that's kind of just a situation or an example of a situation that we've seen and heard with a common theme throughout the last couple months.
Yeah, I just want to stress the importance of what you guys do with your testing of from pH to all the nutrients, the micronutrients, and really understanding what's that baseline, where am I starting, and I always refer to it as what's the bank account, and I think that's mission critical, but understanding how many things do you have tied to the account that are adding in or pulling out. That's kind of the new piece of being able to deal with this. And one of the other exciting parts is being able to crop by crop be able to look at disease. So that's one of the other metrics that will become available with BeCrop Test is putting in the crop that you're sampling, and being able to identify what is the potential. Again, we're not saying that you would have a disease outbreak, but we do have scoring as to the counts and opportunity of at least what is there in the soil, and whether you should be more aware of or less aware of. So again, I think it's pretty exciting time to be able to do some things that we've never been able to do before. So let's take a few minutes and talk about understanding soil biology. So I think this is, Brendan, you and I were looking at the slide and talking yesterday, and I think this is one that we'll probably end up spending a fair amount of time at. But I think this is a great example of, in the past, we would have utilized your samples. And so, let's say this is a grid sample or just a sample from a field. We got 10 samples in the field. We have the ability to look at P and K, the organic matter, CC, all the different things that have traditionally come. But that's kind of where we stop, right? Like we have a value, we can interpret those values. But again, we really don't know who is helping or hurting us beyond what that extracted value says. And so this is an example of using BeCrop technology, BeCrop Test, and being able to dive deeper. So you can see samples 1 through 6. When it looks at inorganic phosphorus solubilization, I'm really going to pick on that one. I think you and I were talking yesterday of, we know where commodity price is. I know I have been hearing where the fertilizer market is on DAP map and the fertilizer products. And so I think this is kind of that mission critical part of the opportunity that's presented this year, is going in and looking at running the fertility test and understanding where you're at, but then understanding if I apply fertilizer the way I normally have and samples 1 through 6, I may not get the response that I'm looking for, especially when I look at inorganic P solubilization. So samples 7 through 10 are in that very high. So we have biology. We have the soil is working in our benefit to make sure that the phosphate fertilizer that we're applying is being made available. The phosphorus potassium systems are very similar, but you see two out of those samples, 6 samples, they're in the medium range. So something's there, but it's not ideal. But when you look at it, 4 out of 10 are samples where we don't have good soil biology. We don't have the mechanism to solubilize and make nutrients available. And I think so when we think through making a decision going into fall, instead of, all right, how many pounds of DAP am I going to apply, or how am I going to do it? Is it going to be straight removal from a yield monitor? Is it just going to be yield test? How am I going to marry? We now have another option to look at when we're moving dollars around of, you know, what product am I going to apply? Does it need a partner product? And what does that combination look like? And how do we make that recommendation to take advantage of the inherent soil biology that we have in one part of the field, but then address that issue that may be holding us back from making all that expensive fertilizer available and putting it to maximum use to drive ROI in those areas that aren't. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, you know, as you were talking through this is, you know, we've always had the mindset of, you know, protecting our return on investment, right? And so we think about, well, we can only control so much, and we're putting out this fertilizer based on, you know, the land-grant university tried and true uptake of the yield goal that we want to achieve. However, something that we maybe haven't thought about in the industry is, how do we support the return on investment? And I think that this is a tool of supporting. So not only are we helping, you know, protect or maximize that return on investment, but now we have another supporting piece that helps get us to that point. So it's not just throwing fertilizer out there and understanding that it's there. Yeah, we may have a bank, but if that fertilizer is sitting in the bank and can't be, you know, pulled out as a resource for that plant, what good is that doing to our investment? And so, and as you were talking through this here, Mark, and even as we talked yesterday, so we always talk about the 4 R's, and so, you know, right place, right time, right product, and whatnot there. But let's talk about that 5th R that you know, we were conversing about there yesterday.
Yeah, I think this image is really that embodiment of the 5th R. We've not been able to see it. You know, we know mineralization and immobilization. You know, those are 2 terms that if you've taken any agronomy class or spent any time in the industry, you know, you should know what those are. But how do we really represent them? Like, how do we really understand them? And so, you know, looking at you know, the information that we can provide in this type of a plot, really gets to that 5th R of, you may have applied all the things, the 4 R's, right place, right rate, right time, right source, but if you don't have the right biology, you don't have the right conditions in the soil to make that available or work in your favor, you're going to have limited luck or limited response. And so this is that new opportunity to really address what we've kind of branded as the 5th R, and that is the right cyclers, the right biology to drive all this process to really drive ROI for growers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's just a great viewpoint to think about. You know, we've always talked about mineralization of organic matter, and we use that as a broad term to understand that, yes, there's microbes out there. It takes heat and moisture to break that organic matter down to mineralize that to where we're getting, you know, a specific amount of nitrogen on a per year basis, and that just helps us on the nitrogen side. Yes, we may get some sulfur. Yes, we may get some phosphorus, but this is an overarching, you know, we can look at each of these nutrients to see specifically what microbial strains are in charge of, you know, mineralizing these or breaking these down into usable forms to the plant. So I think it's just a great way to think about the overall picture, a complete picture.
So Brent, I'm glad you said that, because that leads kind of to our next point of, not only do you get to look at the data in this way, which is a quick visual way to understand who's overperforming and who's underperforming, let's say, but we also have the ability to look at the data in this way. So it's not just who's underperforming or underperforming, but really understanding by what scale. So, you know, if you're in the very low and we make an application, we move you to the low, I mean, yes, we made an improvement, but it was the step change that needed to occur to really see change. Or I kind of think about it as like, you know, the old explanation of buffer pH. You know, it's you know, pH is, we can go run a sample in your pool and see, but buffer pH is really that how much is really going to take to change it. And so now then we have the ability to look at, in this example, in those plots that we were just looking at, the bacillus levels. So block 1 through 6, you know, we're significantly lower than the other samples. And then it's an even more extreme change when we go to the Pseudomonas, looking at their availability and counts in block 1 through 6 versus 7 through 10. So this is another great opportunity of not just looking at, you know, what's going on, but kind of the why and how did we get there. But it also provides an opportunity to look at recommendations. So we can look at, you know, is there a biological product that we could apply that would enhance the Bacillus or Pseudomonas counts in the soil? Are there other products that could be done to, you know, there's several different phosphorus solubilizer and soil amendments that can be applied. It really gives the opportunity for the grower to look at what's going on and what product, because a lot of times there's many products that will impact multiple categories. And so I think this is the exciting part of being able to look at it and figure out what checks the box for the most challenges to give me the best response that we're looking for. So again, I just mentioned it, you know, looking at those solutions. So, you know, I think it's fun to just really call this out of looking at this fall. You know, I know we may mention how expensive fertilizer is, but you know, I really struggle with not wanting to understand how to look at this data and really maximize my phosphorus dollars. You know, maybe it's the opportunity to move some dollars out of a DAP or a phosphorus application and move those. But again, it's really about understanding. I think you mentioned it earlier, is how do you make a decision, and it comes from data and being able to understand where to move the pieces and match the pieces for the best outcome. I think is we're finally checking that box of completing that triangle that you had put together. I think we're finally able to add that third side and check the box and be able to start heading down a full acre better understanding solution.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And just to add one other layer to this conversation, like I stated earlier, so not all yield is created equal, not all acre is created equal, not all soil is created equal. So we also can use this data to our advantage of knowing that all soil has the lowest capacity as a floor and the highest capacity as a ceiling. And so there are some of those acres out there that we may be able to push pretty hard, and we can see the return off of that. But this also helps understand, you know, there's always going to be those acres that are always underperforming no matter what we throw at it. And so this also helps mitigate that risk of why aren't we seeing a return? And sometimes, that may look like, from a management perspective, maybe we don't put the nutrients to the soil, maybe it's more of a foliar application. Or maybe there's more of an amendment, say on a pH side, that we would have to handle to be able to help free up some of those nutrients from the chemistry side. But this also helps us make that decision of how much money do we throw at maybe these lower performing acres, or how much money can we throw at these higher performing acres and push those acres to their max potential. So I think that also helps with the story of really understanding what we have to deal with, especially when times are tough. Maybe Mother Nature gives us a great year, but the economy doesn't, or vice versa. If the economy is great and the weather isn't. I mean, we've seen both sides of this, and so I think it's just really important to think about the big picture and the completeness that this brings.
Yeah, no, you say that, and it popped up. One of the case studies or instances that we had where we were working with the grower, and they were applying significant amounts of fertilizer to try and solve a problem, and lo and behold, they've done that for a few years, and it just wasn't solving the problem. And come to find out, we ran a BeCrop test and were able to identify some of the biological challenges. They applied some amendments, made some changes, and was able to take a very underperforming soil and actually make it productive again. So yeah, you're spot on with that type of analysis. So we want to take a little bit of time to talk about the process of testing.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as for Midwest clients, it's a little bit different of a process, and this is something that's even new to us. So we're getting the feel for this. But like Mark had said at the beginning of the presentation, we're going to be taking that sample just like we would any other nutrient analysis. So whether that's your surface down to 6 inches, surface down to 8 inches, we want to be staying consistent with your historicals. So however you sample previously or now, that's going to be the same way. Now, when you're reaching out to us trying to learn more about this offering, and you decide to do this analysis, just give us a call, or and ask for someone on the agronomy team, whether it be myself, Stacy Nelson, or Vanessa Huxold, and we'll take care of you as far as getting that kit ordered. And so in that kit, you'll receive a soil bag, a Midwest Lab soil bag that will go back to us, as well as a specific submittal form that will have your Biome Makers bio ID on it. And so that's very important. Reason is that's how we're going to marry that data together. And so as that comes through, there's detailed instructions as well on how to take the sample. Once you've taken that and you've gone out to your specific spot out in the field, it's going to be from that same homogenized mixture with that, whether it be 10 to 15 cores. We're going to need 2 cups worth of soil, and from that you can either choose the S3C, which is our most complete nutrient analysis for both macro and micronutrients, or you can also request the soil health complete analysis, which is our S3C plus the Haney analysis, and you're going to be getting some water soluble estimated nitrogen release, CO2 burst, and whatnot there. So those are the options that we have decided to pair with the BeCrop analysis. From there, when you're getting ready to ship, that 2 cups of soil in the Midwest Lab soil bag comes to us. There is a shipping envelope for the vial that goes specifically to Biome Makers there. So we're going to have samples going 2 separate directions, but at the end you're going to have that data come together there for you.
Yeah, I'd like to make one note. The only difference when working with our samples is we do ask to have those samples shipped to the lab as quick as possible. So if by chance you decide to pull a sample on a Friday and can't get that shipped out, one of the things that we would ask is just shove those tubes in the refrigerator and then ship it out to us on Monday morning. That's just one of the slight differences of with our analysis is we do want to get those within 5 days of the sample being pulled, and as quick as possible. And if they can't get shipped out right away, again, super easy, throw them in the fridge, and then once you have all your samples, then ship them out to us. All right, so I think we've finally we come to doing well on time. We're right, almost spot on at 10:41, about the right amount of time for questions. So Brendan, I have got some questions for us that have come in. So we'll just start going down through the list. First one: are there CCA CEUs available for this seminar? I will apologize and say no, not at the moment. Was not able to get the information out there to get this registered for CCA CEUs. I think that's something that Brendan, I think we can look at the opportunity to post apply for those. So that I will make that an effort that we'll take a look and see which one of us or both of us how to get this and see if we can't get some CCA CEUs for this webinar. The next question is more for you, Brendan. Are Midwest Labs GLP certified?
So as far as GLP, to my knowledge, no. I mean, as far as certifications go, and just to cover this quickly, we are a NAPT lab, which is the North American Proficiency Testing. So we do receive blind samples throughout the year, and we run those, and essentially that's our scorecard of how we are producing as a lab, as well as comparing that to other labs throughout the United States and helping standardize the finished product that we all give. So to my knowledge, no on that, but I can definitely take a look at that.
Okay, awesome. So let's see, our next question is, integrated testing could clearly influence future crop species selection decisions. Speculate about the opportunity for testing to influence variety selection decisions. Are seed companies a potential partner in understanding plant-soil interactions? That is a great question, and the answer is yes. Seed companies are definitely a group that we would like to partner with. There's some excellent research papers out there referring to heterosity and microbiome. There's other things from disease, and so yes, I do think in the future. Again, I will say, one of the challenges in the seed industry right now, in general, is product longevity. It wasn't too many years ago that a product would last for 5 to 7 years, and it seems with all the advances that they've had in molecular breeding and those things that we're now seeing hybrids that can max out at a 3-year life cycle. So yes, I think there's definitely an opportunity. It just depends on how we can integrate and at what stage or how early can we on building the data sets required to provide valuable information to you on that. So thank you for that question. That's a great question. Looks like I got one more question. Is low biological availability of P2O5 and K2O really a bad thing? As far as I know, in clay soil, they do not move anywhere for 50 years. Think about it as inflation protection. Buy your fertilizer today at today's prices, even better, buy them 10 years ago and have them used by plants for the next 30 years. I've got my opinion, Brendan. I guess I'll go first. So part of that comes down to actual soil physical and chemical properties. I know, Brendan, you mentioned doing a total digestion which is sort of that look. And correct me if I'm misstating this, but it's looking at kind of the total overall that's available in the soil. And that is part of the effort is to make more of that available. There becomes the challenge or question of how much of that can potentially be unlocked or is permanently or semi-permanently bound. So I definitely think there's opportunities. It's just, when you look at the availability, I guess I'm going to look at it this way, and Brendan, you can expand. But when you look at soil fertility scores, if we're already scoring low, and depending on what the yield goal or the crop yield is, that's where the traditional science goes back and tells us we run into some pretty big challenges as those soil test levels go low. Our response to fertilizer significantly increases the farther down those go. So I think it comes back to a management decision of what can you afford, what's the return on that investment, and trying to manage and continue to improve yields and crop quality.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. You nailed it there. And I think just to add to that, if we look at a total nutrient digest, we can understand that there is some wiggle room, as far as what could be available. Maybe it's not on a weak acid extraction, but that could maybe mean that a portion of that could be available in the next 5 to 10 years. But that's where there's two things that come into mind. It's one, the parent material, being how eroded or weathered is that soil itself, because a lot of what we pick up in those strongly acid extractions is the rock mineral form. I mean, that's what that soil is made up of. So when we look at a plant available nutrient analysis, that is a very, very small portion in respect to what all is there. And the way I explain it is how much are we willing to base our decisions off of potential luck, rather than knowing that we are putting the nutrients that are needed in the most plant available form to that growing plant to meet our goals. I mean, I do think that there's some years where we get lucky and all the stars align, and we may put very little out there based off the scale that we're using on, say, either a crop replacement or just what we can afford. And we always hope to exceed our expectations. That can happen, but that doesn't mean you're going to have consistency year after year. So that's just something that I think about on that aspect is, with clays, we could think about that, the storage capacity is obviously higher. We can retain those nutrients, but what does our balance look like? And so this is just one other quick thing is, every presentation that I've ever done has a slide with Liebig's law, and it's got the barrel and the staves and talks about the balance of each and every single nutrient. So from a chemistry standpoint, we have to look at that as well. Just because the soil has the storage doesn't mean that we have these other nutrients that are supporting the availability to it from a chemical standpoint. So that's also something to keep in mind there, as we think about different soil types and the scenarios that it gives us for nutrient availability.
Yeah, and just thinking through what you said, and just to throw on this and get your opinion, but I think adding the biological sample, especially if you're on the lower end of those P2O5, K2O values, becomes even more critical of really understanding. Like it's one thing to have a low value and have the right guys there to make it available, but you're almost double whammied if you've got low values and you have no microbial action to do that phosphorus or potassium solubilization. So
Yeah.
throw that out there for what it's worth.
Absolutely, and we think about response curves, right? And so, Mark, you and I were talking about this yesterday. If we have say a low population of a specific microbe, or I mean, even from a nutrient standpoint, if we have a low availability of a nutrient and we go to apply even a small amount, we can see a fairly large return on average. Now, granted, there's a lot of other outside things that come into play with that, but that's where even if clients were to ask me that, I always encourage to do a trial to see what that looks like. Start small scale and then go up from there. Those little steps really get us to the big picture as far as what works. And so that would be my challenge or recommendation is if we're seeing those low responses or low analytics, let's see what we can do to improve them.
So it looks like we got a couple more questions. We'll take them as we have time here. What depth of soil sample is ideal for the biological tests? Would it be worth taking a biological sample 0 to 4 inches, 4 to 8 inches, or something similar? So Brendan, I think you kind of hit on that of what you're normally doing. So our typical recommendation is a 0 to 6. In an ideal world, we would ask you to take that top 2 inches off, so it would be the 4 to 6 inches. But we work with a whole host of different sampling methods, and so if it's 0 to 6, we can work with that. But it's really sticking with kind of what you've traditionally done and marrying that with the test that Brendan, you and Midwest Labs provides. Brendan, I think we want to tackle this one. I think this one's pretty important. It says, what are some real recommendations from the results of this testing? Are they variable rate applying biological products manure? There is that opportunity. There's some other tools that we haven't talked about today, but yeah, there is definitely the opportunity to use these recommendations in a subfield level. That's a whole different conversation that we'll have to have another day. But yeah, I think Brendan, you and I talked about this yesterday of simply looking at our spend and what we're spending on DAP, and looking at how do I move some dollars around. What's the cost of the tests? Do I want to leave some dollars open for another product? But I think it really comes down to just pulling the test and looking at where's my soil test level, what's my soil biology, is it helping or hurting me? And then it's an allocation of dollars as to where am I going to get the best ROI, bang for my buck, going into 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything I missed?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, and yeah, we had the exact same conversation yesterday, and it's just trying to understand that large scale, because it's not often thought about, I think, and so yeah, I have nothing to add there.
Yeah, I just think it does add some complexity. Let's be real. This gives you the opportunity to spend more time and make more field by field recommendations, which I think is something we've all been striving to how to manage better. But it definitely provides that opportunity to tailor a recommendation to each field. We don't have time today, but I've got a great example of three fields that are side by side, and specifically looking at phosphorus solubilization and the potassium side. They are three very different fields. One's in really good shape, 70% or so is performing well. The next one is half of it is performing well, half of it is very much underperforming, and then the other field is the whole thing is underperforming. And so I bring that up because being able to use this technology is going to be able to drive that recommendation of, I've got however many fields, they may all be getting somewhat different treatments just because of where they are from a soil test level. standpoint, as well as that soil biology. But again, it's about the data and the being able to get to that better recommendation to get us to being able to grow a good crop, especially in 26, considering some of the challenges that we're facing in 25. All right, looks like we got time for maybe one more question. How detailed is your analysis functional groups to species level? So we do have some pretty good detail. So when we make recommendations, typically those recommendations aren't made on a product by product; they're by a functional group. So whether that's like a Bacillus megaterium, that would be a recommendation. So if we're running analysis and that's the recommendation, we would stop there and give somebody the opportunity to go find a product that best fits their market, their use rate, their application method. So that's sort of been our approach if and when we make recommendations, is to keep it to kind of a class of recommendations and not to a specific product. I do see one more question. I just so if you're still on the call with us, I do not have an answer to that question, but I will pose it to our team and make sure that we get a response referring to the viewer that asked the question about the orchard. So I'm not ignoring you. I just don't have a good answer for that. I'll put that over to our agronomy team, and we will get you a response on that. So Brendan, we're down to 3 minutes. Is there anything else that you would like to add from a Midwest Lab standpoint?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll start with the question here for you, Mark. And this is one that we have posed is as we get conversations from clients on, well, there's a lot of biologicals out there, and yes, we've maybe got it narrowed down, but how do we start? How do we look into what's out there? Do you have any tips or tricks there for the people on the call of maybe where to start? Once you get that data in hand, how can you start researching maybe what biologicals are out there and available?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brendan. One of the things that we've done is we've partnered with AgList. So if you're not familiar with them, just go search AgList. They've got a list of biologic products. They've also got products that have our BeCrop certification. Those would be products that we've tested and run through our system to show performance. And then also check out our webpage, biomakers.com. We have a whole host of resources, links, webinars, a whole host of things in there to look at, and some by specific crops. So be sure to check out. Those would be the two places that I would first start. And then we also have other resources out there like our BeCrop guide. And other things. And an exciting note, we are in the process of trying to build out a new AI chatbot to be able to answer as many questions as possible around some of the stuff. So those are some of the other tools and options that your team and ours have access to, Brendan.
Perfect. No, I definitely appreciate that tip, and hope that helps some people out here on the call of kind of exploring maybe a new territory. So well, we definitely appreciate everyone's time today, and from myself and the team, we appreciate the partnership here, Mark, and we look forward to growing this part of the industry. Yep,
Brendan, I want to say thank you on behalf of Biomakers to Midwest Labs. Thank you for becoming one of our new partners. Appreciate the support. We are here to help you and your growers and to continue to move ag forward. If you were in person, I'd shake your hand, but we can't do that, so we'll do that the next time I get a chance to meet with you in person. But again, thank you to all the viewers who took time out of their day to be with us and learn a little bit more about Biomakers, BeCrop Technology, and Midwest Labs, and all the great resources and tools that they have to offer. So with that, thank you again. Everyone be safe and have a blessed day.